The Tokyo and Kyoto Jujutsu high schools have grown to have a strong cast of sorcerers, from acquiring a new age Toji and Maki Zenin, a genius in the midst of battle in Toto, and the vessel of Sukuna Yuji Itadori. There are two specific characters that have been propped the highest by their teacher and leader Satoru Gojo. These two characters represent every facet of Gojo's ideal future for sorcerers and society. They are the special grade sorcerer Yuta Okotsu and the restless gambler Kinji Hakari. In this video, we'll be discussing why Gojo chose these two specifically to define the next generation. This video will contain spoilers for the Killing Games Part 2 and the Core 2, and basically later arcs in the manga, so if you are anime only, watch at your own discretion. We'll start with Yuta since he was the one introduced first and kind of set the table for us, the audience, for as far as how strong a young sorcerer can be. Looking at Yuta's power, he is an offensive juggernaut. To first cover Yuta's abilities, we have to cover Rika first real quick, the literal store center of his true power. In this promised ring that was given to him in Volume 0, Yuta is able to call upon Rika, the vengeful curse spirit that was unfortunately killed via vehicular manslaughter, and she's a force on her own physically, but with Yuta they are nearly unstoppable. Once Rika is activated, Yuta can now use all of his curse techniques and curse energy to his fullest potential, along with some curse tools such as brass knucks or like this steel arm that he gets. He then gets access to his copy curse technique. Yuta has numerous ways to beat, subdue, or kill his opponents. He obtains the techniques via Rika eating up part of the sorcerer's body. In Volume 0, he didn't have that function yet because it really wasn't canon, but he was able to copy Toga Inamaki's curse speech, which became useful all the way up until the end of the series. Curse speech allows for Yuta to give commands verbally with curse energy, and the enemy has to do it, whether it's stop, die, blast away, unless they can block it with curse energy placed around their ears. But with Inamaki, this technique had a low ceiling due to Inamaki's body and average curse energy output. In the hands of Yuta, it becomes way more dangerous as Yuta is one of the strongest characters in the show. Next is Drew's curse technique that didn't have an official name, but we'll call it Orbiting Shikigami. With this technique, Yuta is able to create mini Shikigami from his own body, like the pieces of hair he took off his head to make these mini Rika bats. With the Shikigami, they create a domain barrier together that if the opponent exits this invisible barrier, they are attacked with slashing attacks across the body, which is a pretty solid defensive technique. Never knew exactly what the full potential of something like this would be, but it's pretty useful. Then in that same free-for-all battle, he got Uro's sky manipulation. Just like the name says, Yuta can make the sky tangible and use it to reflect projectile-based attacks or even hide himself for a quick moment. This technique can also work offensively with his extension technique, Thin Icebreaker, where he can strike the sky and create an impact that visually depicts the sky breaking, and it directly hits the target in front of him. This can be used from the distance and in close combat. It's actually my favorite of all the abilities he's shown, just because of the interactions with Uro, and the concept of using the sky as your power always seemed pretty interesting to me. And the fact that we'll never see the domain expansion is a crime. Heading into the final battle against Sukuna, Yuta showed off 4 curse techniques. Starting with the lesser of the 4 is Charles' Future Sight technique. With G War Staff, and in Yuta's case his katana, the user draws a manga panel and attaches it to the opponent to see the future movements of his opponent. We can only see about 1 to 2 seconds in advance, but for utility it's nice to have. Yuta then took one of Sukuna's fingers and fed it to Rika, granting him some of Sukuna's shrine. He only used Cleave against Sukuna, which didn't do a ton of damage, it just kind of cut his face up a bit. He then acquired Hanakaruza, the Angel's technique of Curse Technique Extinguish and Jacob's Ladder, letting him nullify all Jujutsu techniques when it hits a target. So yeah, if you haven't caught on just yet, we're reaching levels of absurdity when it comes to just how strong and frightening Yuta can get against people. And last but not least, the final technique he copied was that of Kenjaku, the man behind Geto's revitalization, and took his brain swapping ability along with the stitches. Using the body swap on Satoru Gojo is basically a way to preserve his damaged body and still fight against Sukuna. And Gojo's body that he actually had practice in, as Gojo gave him the okay to do something like this. He used Gojo's domain expansion to counter Sukuna's malevolent shrine. In turn, he has access to curse technique Blue Lapse, which he used in combination with the curse speech radio trick, along with even Hollow Purple. Obviously Yuta isn't a master with it, so he in turn broke his own domain and injured Sukuna enough to make Sukuna not use his domain. We also can't forget, of course, he has reverse curse technique, which he learned relatively easier than Gojo, and can make the case that he's better at it overall than Gojo, as he can use RCT on other people as well. He also knows how to use RCT on his own curse technique, even if it is a risky move. And finally, we have domain expansion for Yuta, which is authentic mutual love. Surrounded by marital crosses and katanas, Yuta can grab a katana that contains one of his copy techniques and use it on command with no restrictions. Due to his curse technique being copy, he can alter the circuit effect of his domain. In the battle versus Sukuna, he made the sure hit effect curse technique extinguish, forcing Sukuna to hold hollow wicker basket as simple domain variation the entire time, until they forced him out of it, of course. Gojo saw Yuta's potential early on and made sure that Yuta and Rika will be able to develop together and make sure that they don't become tools for the higher ups. And as a matter of fact, the way that he meets Yuji for the first time is similar to how Yuji met Gojo. Yuta fights Yuji by himself and beats him convincingly and temporarily kills him. Yuta is sitting in front of him in a dimly lit area and explains to him how they plan to keep him alive going forward and to keep Sukuna at bay, with both agreeing that if Sukuna came out, Yuta could take Sukuna on one-on-one, which at that point probably would not have agreed on that. I do like that Yuta represents a half of Gojo. For as similar as they are, Yuta is similar to Gojo in how potentially destructive he can be if he just goes all out by himself. However, since Yuta is still weaker than Gojo at full power, what Yuta is far better at than Gojo is being able to fight with other sorcerers in the battle. Yuta is actually at his full potential when he has someone he can synergize his attacks with and strategize with. Notice how every technique Yuta copied are techniques that don't have a ton of AoE, so in pure raw potential and power, he meets Gojo's standard. However, there are two very specific reasons why Gojo chose Hakari Kinji to be a contemporary as well early on. Then we got Hakari Kinji, a suspended third year for Jujutsu High that was one of the first to join the Tokyo School, a delinquent gambler character that defied the higher ups during the 100 Demon Parade and beat them up. So in turn, this guy's already going to be one of the coolest in the entire series. And with Yuta's offensive depth, what would Gege do to make his counterpart different in every conceivable way, but keep him incredibly strong? The answer to this is by making Hakari the most resilient sorcerer in the series and giving him the greatest defense as well, all with one technique. His domain expansion Idle Death Gamble, or Wrestler's Gambler, depending on which name you prefer. I like the Wrestler's Gambler as a nickname rather than a domain name, but that's a discussion for another day. In this domain, the properties of it are completely different than the New Age lethal domain, where instead of a sure hit, sure kill, it's a non-lethal that is rule based, and the sure hit is instant once the domain is casted. Ironically, Hakari was born with an older version of a domain, where the domain is etched into this curse technique, and he's able to configure the domain to his liking. And thus, what Hakari conjured was basically turning his domain into a pachinko machine, which are arcade Japanese slot machines that can have pinballs to it too. I like to simplify things for folks because I know after a couple of years there are still some people that don't understand the stuff that's happening in this thing. However, if you really want a simplified version that's super simple, Gege puts the rules in this tiny little box in the top right, where if this dude hits the 3 symbols in a row, he gets a jackpot, which is the inevitable goal. And although it says he has 1 out of 239 chance of hitting a jackpot, that's in normal mode. If he fails to get a jackpot on the first try in normal mode with a regular 1 out of 239 chance, he can then keep doing normal mode until he gets a jackpot. Now you think, damn, that kind of sucks, until you take a second and look at the visual indicators box. Green, red, and gold. Gold doors or balls is a high chance of hitting a jackpot. However, after 3 consecutive fails, this dude gets a pity jackpot, which if you ever played a gacha, you know what that is. He gets a rainbow visual, which is a guaranteed jackpot. And speaking of gacha, these reaches on the left side are basically animation scenes that indicate what type of pool you might get, with the final train scenario reaching over an 80% perfect chance of success. And the chance boosters are situations that happen with the scenarios that can increase the chances of a jackpot. What makes all of this cool is that Hakari and his opponent are also brawling within the confines of the setting of the scenario, in this case the train station. So you virtually have 3 tries at trying to kill Hakari before he reaches that 4th chance or less. And after hitting the jackpot, he receives jackpot state and the rewards. He receives an infinite amount of curse energy for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. It's so much that it practically oozes out of him. Now Hakari is immortal for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and against Kashimo, we saw the full limit of this as he shook his arm getting blown off and regenerated instantly, and even healed his brain and head instantly when Kashimo was going to blow his head off. And against Urame, we see him regenerate and break free from Urame's ice effortlessly. With infinite curse energy, he gains RCT, and it operates automatically on his body, so he can brawl to his heart's content and receive 0 damage from his opponent for 4 minutes, which is a pretty long time. Also have to mention his curse energy trait. Every blow from him, curse energy applied, it's like getting hit with a serrated bat. It's been described twice that his curse energy is sharp or has an edge to it, and what makes Hakari truly a temporary special grade threat is that when the time runs out and the song stops, he can simply activate his domain again, this time with either increased probability or time reduction. If the number is even, he gets time reduction, and if he gets an odd jackpot, it's increased probability. That's at least not all the time, but that's kind of what it seems to be. So the only way you kill him is during these short effects, but depending on what he gets, he could just eliminate the pain by redoing the sequence again. And this is the reason why when Hakari is on a roll, Yuta says he's probably stronger than him, because how in the world do you kill someone who can't die and is a physical monster? Also, shout out Gambler, he has a really good video breaking down Hakari's domain. To complete the other half of this tandem, the other reason Hakari is valued so highly by Gojo is because Hakari is very similar to him in character and vision for the future. Gojo wants to develop strong sorcerers that bend the limit normal Jujutsu society places on them, so no one is left idly by themselves alone in a dark cycle of sorcerers and curses. Hakari wants to spread his fever to all of Japan and monetize on sorcerers' abilities combined with everyone's hidden fever of gambling, making his fight club expand across Japan. This will make sorcery mainstream, which has been forbidden since it started. Luckily, we found out in Mojolo he actually got his wish on that. Hakari is always betting on himself in the future of Jujutsu society. On top of that, the dude is charismatic and a little bit out of his mind, which we learned in order to be a strong sorcerer, you kinda gotta be insane. And considering he was able to convince people to join his fight club and even reason with a killer in Kashimo to help him reach the goal he wants in fighting Sukuna, it's safe to say Hakari's way of judging character is not normal to a lot of people. Hakari represents that good sorcerers can have ulterior motives in what they want to do, even if it is selfish, prioritizing someone's fever over hierarchy and traditions. When he meets Yuji and fights him, he hates that when Yuji tries to convince him to join, it sounds like Yuji wants Hakari's help because he was told to do so. And when Yuji just says he's a cog in a machine of sorcerers trying to eradicate curses, Hakari punches him for the third time unguarded with more force because that sounds like Itadori is just a soldier with no free will and just another sorcerer with traditional and boring thoughts. But the shift happens when Itadori gets up again and shocks Hakari about how a cog like Itadori can have so much determination and willpower to succeed on their goal. Even when Yuji reiterates what he is currently and that he doesn't plan to leave until Hakari joins, Hakari is caught off guard and doesn't exactly know what to do besides keep hitting him until Karara steps in and basically exposes that Yuji got Hakari worked up out of curiosity rather than anger, which is a form of fever. And that in the past, Hakari's fever was the highest when he was able to help people. So Gege was able to cultivate two powerful sorcerers, one that is centered around beating you in an endless amount of ways offensively, while still having a kind heart and is centered around love, and the other is one who is unkillable and at worst can stall you out, leaving you with no curse energy, who defies everything traditional regarding Jujutsu sorcery. And they're both helping shape the future of Jujutsu society in a more modern that was incorporated in that group like really early on the JJK with Yuji and Todo. But I'm gonna cover Mojolo Yuji in another video because I really want to talk about him in the current status of JJK Mojolo. But Yuta and Hakari are two of my favorite characters in the series, and I'm loving seeing them animated. It's just kind of surreal seeing them animated and actually get some really cool scenes adapted and seeing how certain things are interpreted in the anime. But of course, if you like content like this, go ahead, leave a like and subscribe. I'll holla at y'all in the next one. Peace.